All right. Sustaining change. If you are a change maker, someone who is here to right wrongs, or someone who is here to make a positive impact on the world, then you've absolutely come to the right place. Hi, I'm Dr. Ed. I'm just a geek dad from the northeast side of Calgary who's obsessed about the future. Now, after about a year of live streaming, I've learned that the kinds of people that keep coming back over and over again are the change makers. I'm currently studying coaching. It's called Coaching Like a Leader. And I want to help you sustain action because without the burnout, because it's sustained action that creates change. Now, I'll be honest with you, 2 years ago, I read The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang. He was a presidential candidate in the United States. And it completely transformed my perspective on politics. And it ultimately led to my run for school board trustee in October of 2021. Now, in a similar fashion, I began reading Andrew's new book called Forward, Notes on the Future of Our Democracy, which talks about his political perspective that now comes from his run and understanding a little bit more of how the system works internally. And so he highlights a number of systemic challenges that we face. And when I was reading this, because I feel like I have a very unique perspective on this book, because I found so many similarities to my own run for school board trustee. I thought that, well, maybe I should share some of my perspectives to let you know about how much of that mirrors the same types of things we see in the political realm today here in Alberta. And so the three topics that I want to cover today are: one, the system is broken; number two, why change is hard; and number three is a way forward. And so I'm looking forward. Feel free, pop in the chat or something. Just let me know if you're catching us for the first time. I am so glad you're here. We are talking about sustaining change. And the book we are covering is The Forward. So I'll just write down the name of the book. It's called Forward, Notes on the Future of Our Democracy by Andrew. And while I'm writing these down, feel free to pop into the chat where you're joining from, any questions that you might have. I'm here to do this live for you, just to answer any of your questions. Our democracy. Yes. All right, cool. So I am going to start with the first one. And so the first one is called The System is Broken. Okay, so it's hard to believe what we see in the news these days. It feels like every single, it's so hard to believe the things that you see in the news these days, because it feels like every single decision in health and in education results in the worst possible outcomes. I'm pulling my hair out trying to put some meaning behind everything that's going on these days. And that's why I was so glad to find this book, because it really helped me. And it's times like these that it helps to keep in mind that we come from totally different perspectives. I come from a perspective that values public education and really believes that COVID is airborne. But could the focus of our politicians be on something totally different? Could understanding that perspective help us understand or help us come to grips with what's going on today. Like, what if, hypothetically, our government ran on a platform of specifically bringing jobs back? How would you vote if you weren't sure if your job would be around next year? Or if you've been looking for work for some time? Now, what if we looked at the policies and decisions in education and in healthcare through the lens of jobs? Sure, a curriculum could have been licensed from a legit curriculum content company, but how many jobs would that bring locally? Wouldn't asking companies locally to create jobs in Alberta make a lot more sense? Like, if jobs was your only focus, wouldn't it make a lot more sense just to find a company locally? I mean, even if the results was a curriculum full of errors, not interesting to kids at home, I mean, at least a few more people in our local province would have a job. I mean, that's not a bad thing, is it? I mean, sure, it's easy to follow the science that COVID is airborne and give every teacher and student a supply of N95 masks. Like last time I just talked about like just, the different types of N95 masks that are available. But come on, let's be honest. Like these masks, where are they manufactured? These masks are manufactured in British Columbia. So how many local jobs would this create if that was the only thing that you cared about? Wouldn't wouldn't it be better just to find a local company that could like do a pivot and provide those masks locally? I mean, sure, there probably isn't enough time to get them certified by NIOSH or FFP3 standards. So it's not going to be a true medical grade masks. But isn't that a price worth paying for more jobs? What are we as a society willing to sacrifice in order to get more jobs? What are we willing to sacrifice? This is an important question. I mean, Alberta has gone from 11% unemployment to around 7% unemployment. So this 4% of unemployment was all worth it, right? Like seriously, are jobs worth sacrificing, say, our mental health? Are jobs worth seeing our loved ones struggle with long COVID? Are jobs worth sacrificing our values and our care for other people? These are the tough questions. If you ask people, like in most voting areas, would you want more jobs? The answer is yes. But the question that is not asked is, what are you willing to sacrifice for those jobs? So change makers like you fight each and every day for a more human-centered capitalism. How we spend our money, like how we use it towards helping other people is very important. And these change makers want to not lose hope. We don't want to burn out, and we don't want to give up. I mean, the reality is we're all tired. And so it's time. It's time to start looking at sustaining change. Similar to the jobs example, we sacrifice in the same way so much of our sleep, our relationships, and even our precious time with family for our passions. Are we going to continue sacrificing everything for our passions? Or is 2022 going to be this year of balance? Is 2022 going to be a year of sustaining the change that you're passionate about? I believe that we achieve only the things that we sustain. You've got to put money into your Disney Plus account every month in order to sustain your membership. And in the same way, you've got to put regular time and effort into your passions in order to sustain them. Most passions burn super bright and then they burn out. They put lots of effort in for a very short period of time. And like with that time, I didn't see any result. This is not the way. This is not the way to sustain your passions. And so I want to emphasize that the reality is it's not just like ourselves, like sustaining ourselves, but change itself is very hard. And that's what I'm going to cover next. You know, this pandemic has showed us how much of our lives are impacted directly by politics and health policies. They've completely changed the way that we learn and the way that we work. Businesses have had their incomes directly impacted by closures. And for many families, they've had to say goodbye to people that they love. And I want to emphasize this because this is like really personal for me as well. Just this today, we finally got the notice from the school. Last week, it was like 1 case, 2 cases of like COVID a day that was being reported in our school. And this week, like since the beginning of the week, it's been like 8 cases. And then today, 8 cases. And today I received the dreaded email. Usually if it's a case inside your classroom, you as a parent get the notice that, yep, somebody in your child's class has contracted COVID. And I got that today. I got that message. And now we're like, oh my God, this is exactly what we were worried about. Like, this is all the stuff that I don't know how to describe it. Like, you spend all this time preparing, you think you should be ready, and in the end, you still have no clue. You still have no clue what's going to happen. Like, just that uncertainty. And normally, this would be fine. Like, you know, we would get through it. I would be going to work. I would be speaking to other people at the water cooler. But because of the work restrictions, what happens when we don't have a water cooler at work to discuss the world and everything that's happening in our crazy world today? You know, have some of your friends or yourself, like, have you started talking about things like politics online? Maybe social media is the new water cooler chats. I mean, look at what we see online every single day. I remember, like, there are so many days that I watch like social media, and I know that this stuff has a big impact. It's like we need to really watch this stuff and how much we consume. One of the things that Andrew Yang says in his book Forward is that we've become far more partisan than before. And not just because of social media companies, although like that's typically where we would go first. Like we would say, like, they are amplifying, they're making certain types of information viral. But we've gone from like relatively facts-based media to this hyper-partisan news that is largely divorced from the facts. And Andrew Yang's book says that we've been polarized to the point of radicalization. And you don't need to look any further than the January 6th riots on the Capitol. In fact, right here in Alberta, there's an even closer example. We see protests happening in front of our elected officials' homes. Our Minister of Health had protests on his driveway. Our mayor had protesters on her driveway. And one of our city councilors also had protests right in front of his driveway. And this was all last week. Like, when we say, like, partisan to the point of radicalization, partisanship, like, that is precisely what we are talking about. People are so tired, and they're so done with the pandemic that they just can't stand by idly. They have to move forwards towards action. Now, you might be thinking like, oh, like just those other guys, you know, they're not thinking straight. They don't have their heads screwed on correctly. And I was reminded of a video that Andrew Yang, like a podcast that he recently did, which I thought gave some perspective. And I'm only going to show like a really short clip of it, but I think it's very relevant to kind of understand the perspective of how we're feeling. So if you'll permit me, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, how am I going to do this?
Mess with the schools is waking up a lot of Dems to the fact that, look, this should not be as ideological as it is. I mean, one thing that Bill Maher just put out that you just sent me was that Democrats dramatically overestimate the chances of COVID putting you in the hospital.
And it's not like, you know, the actual number is 1 to 5%, right?
Yeah.
Some of that. But it's not like we think 20% of the people are dying. They think like 50+% of people are dying. And 70% of the party thinks it's over 20% of people are dying.
Yeah. So this to me has to be the message that these moms are finding out.
Yeah.
Is that the Democrats imagine that they're the party of facts and science, and then the Republicans are troglodytes and, you know, like ignorant and the rest of it.
Yep.
But then when you start digging, it turns out that the Democrats are actually tribal and ideological in the same way as anyone else. And that's not a knock. It's just, you know, everyone's somewhat tribal. But then if someone like this mom in Cleveland raise her hand and be like, hey, I'm a member of the tribe and like, you know, these facts aren't lining up, then they'll just get hammered down. Like instead of, you know, so like, because then they'll be like, hey, it turns out you're not on our team or whatnot.
Yes.
And there are all these people embedded within the Democratic Party who actually have similar points of view who fear the hammering down. Yes. They know if they say these things. And that's what we're going to get to now, which is your experience as someone who is something of a convert to the Democratic Party, that there's a sense that some people's experiences are more valid than others. If you are, let's say.
Okay, so that was just a brief clip, but to me, this explains, like this kind of puts things into perspective, that it's not all one way or the other. In fact, I think both sides are like they both are kind of moving towards the same thing. We both want this pandemic to be over. We both want to get back to the same situation. However, what prevents us from doing that? How come we can't do that? And we talked a little bit about this partisan news, but it's not just the partisanship, it's also the politics, the way the structure of politics is designed. And I think that this is something that Andrew Yang explains really well in his book. Okay, so now let's say that you see what's going on and you just decide, okay, you know what, I can't take it anymore. And you decide, that's it, I'm going to run for political office. I'm going to change the policies in health, or I'm going to change the policies in education. And let's say you're even fortunate enough to become the elected official. you're now in the seat, right? You're an elected official now. Awesome. Then in theory, change should be easy, right? Right? Like there should be nothing left for you to do. I mean, it's just a matter of passing some laws, right? Well, you know that the reality is that you're facing a huge uphill battle that Andrew Yang calls the gerontocracy. And I love that. It's like basically it's like it's like a meritocracy, except it's about how old you are. And in this, he cited how your reelection rate for existing incumbents was high. We're talking like 90% reelection rate. It was very close. And so you just had people who were there like year after year after year. And really what it boiled down to is you are, who just joined, are a rookie politician. So your job is to sit back, not make too much noise, and make sure that you're very focused on getting more funding for the next election cycle. And of course, like there isn't an expectation. You are not part. It's going to be many, many years before you can be a part of the cabinet and start making some policies and some decisions. So, be patient. Your time will come. But in the meantime, make sure that you're getting the funding that you need for the upcoming election. And even if you do make it to cabinet, the problem is there's only one of you, and you need consensus in order to make change happen. So let's say you were focused on an issue like anti-racism. Then if you're the only person who has that perspective in a committee or a board of, say, 7 people, then you can be pretty sure that no change is actually going to occur. And this has been tough. Like I have seen this. We have really good people in politics that are working their hardest to fix a broken system. But how can you fix it? Right? It's broken. It is very, very difficult to fix. And so it is from these examples that he showed that helped me understand, like, it's really tough to just go and make a change like this. You don't just come in and like, oh, suddenly I've made it, and then now I need to make change. We need to look way more at sustainability. And so what does sustainability look like? And to me, I want to say it's about turning those passions into pledges, into donations, into income that is going to help the causes that you are pushing. It's not about just volunteering like forever. I feel like you need to be able to bring in the income. And so this week my wallet has been burning because of like a lot of donations that I've been making, and I wanted to share about them because I think they're great. There's some great examples of turning like passion into pledges, and I think this week, honestly, and these are just examples locally, we saw several amazing Albertans step up to the plate in order to help others. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few examples. So if you can bear with me, I'm gonna share some of those examples with you. So where's my first example? Okay, here it is. Yes. Okay, so the first example is Albert Nobbs, who runs the Alberta Activists Collective. He was seeing how our elected officials were all wearing these N95 masks, hidden, of course, underneath their cloth masks that they're telling us to use, while the houseless in our city and in our province had pretty much no protections available to them for any type of help. And so what he did is he set up, oh, I need to make this bigger. It's too small. Yes, bigger. He set up a GoFundMe called Mask Equity Alberta. And what I love about this one, and it's amazing, like within only a few weeks, like let's see, when was this started? It doesn't say here. Yeah, they usually don't have the start date on here. But I think this is only a few weeks. They've already received almost over 450 donations, and they've raised $27,800 out of their $25,000 goal. And this is incredible. Like people have really stepped up in order, and this is like ordinary Calgarians who just saw something that they're like, I can't just sit back and do this anymore. I need to actually create. I need to see the change actually happen. Very excited about mask equity because this is the challenge. Just like you have your politicians and you have your elected officials using one type of mask, and then everybody else, like which is a respirator type, like N95 or better, and then you have your like everybody else, all teachers and all students being given these masks, which we had learned from like a picture of the box that they don't even meet the NIOSH or the FFP3 standards for a medical mask. So they're completely untested. Like we don't even know if they work. And so that is a really positive story. And, you know, honestly, I loved seeing the photos of Albert going out to all of the different locations that he had been to. I think this one is the mustard seed. Yes, it is. And so I'll just show you like just one or two images just because I love them so much. So, you know, this one, for example, he's saying making more friends at the mustard seed. Good people are everywhere. If you look for them, resistance is awesome. I love that. This was the image, and in it, the warning label on the bottom, you can't see it, but this mask is not a respirator or surgical mask. It is not a barrier. It basically says it doesn't do anything, which is very good legal like disclaimer, but not very reassuring for parents. This is Alpha House. Like there's a number of different places, and they hand delivered every single one of these. So great job, Albert. This was fantastic. It was amazing to see. And so I see that as like these are the kinds of trends. These are the kinds of things that can happen when we can take that passion and turn it into like really what is a GoFundMe page? It is like a really simple like graphic that you can make, and usually it's not a professional graphic, and then it's copy, and then it is really good, compelling, emotional copy. And if you have some really great like copywriting skills and you have the right kind of following, this can activate so many people, and you can really get a phenomenal payout for the work that you're doing here. Another one that I absolutely love is this one. Yes. Okay. So some of you who know me know that I've been involved with something called the She Was 16, which is a kind of a hashtag that was created around protection of women and girls who are trying to who are victims of sexual assault, and they're trying to like get some legitimacy within a system that is there to, for the most part, like ignore them, pretend like the situation doesn't exist, and it becomes really challenging for them. And to me, this has been a really tough one because people are like, "Oh, you're trying to take advantage of like a victim," and that wasn't the goal. Like I even spoke to some of the organizers saying like, no, like we need to change the messaging from like focusing on a particular person to we need to focus on way more on the She Was 16, because that's like a bulletproof argument, right? And so the key message of what you are about is so important. And And so we saw some new stuff from this week where the actual victim, who hasn't really spoken in the news, she's reported of as HH. She actually set up her own GoFundMe page, and this was like honestly like the beginning of like it was like a few days ago, really. And so it said like 6 days ago, and they've already raised like over $11,000. It says legal fund for HH. So HH is the name that was given by the media for the victim, and it says like the sexual assault victim, and she actually explains her story here about what she has had to go through, and it's harrowing. Where she talks about like she pretty much had to fund her own justice. And I think that this is something that really like irks me, is that, you know, funding justice, especially when the victim is a minor, does not ring right for me. Like I had a problem with, like we have this whole debate about in Alberta, if you want to challenge a ticket now, you have to pay $150 just to challenge it. And then like, so the barrier to fighting your own justice is $150 for any traffic related offense now. And so that caused a huge amount of controversy. But in this case, the victim, HH, had to fund her own legal defense for 10 years. And to me, that like I can't imagine the cost. Like what would 10 years of legal proceedings cost? I can't imagine the cost associated with that. And then eventually she just ran out of money, and then she ended up having to drop the case. And as a result, like nobody actually knew anything about what happened until like really close to election time. A reporter actually was able to pull this up, and then learned a lot more. And so this has not been easy for the victim, but this person has said, like, you know what, like it's extremely hard. Things have not been easy for her. She showed a picture like of her tires being slashed. Like people are very adamant, like, oh, they shouldn't be helped, and like they're threatening her. And so yeah, she needs help, and I'm pleased to say, like, you know, $10,000 within a week. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal. So I'm very excited about that one. I think that to me, it's victims shouldn't have to fund their own justice is kind of my perspective. Otherwise, do you really have justice? Like you have justice for those who can pay. And I think that that's the challenge is we have a legal system, but if the legal system is so expensive that entry into the legal system or getting justice requires a huge amount of fee, then there's just no way that most people will be able to get justice. And so it'll really be justice only for those who can afford it, which is what we want to avoid. Okay, and the next one. So this one I would say is one of the ones that I'm most excited about. And one of the reasons for is it's near and dear to my heart. Like it's education. It is another like equity issue. And it relates to the science, and I love science, and I love supporting education. And so just yesterday, like this is like hot off the press, guys. We saw Krista Lee and Amanda Hu are part of the Clean Air crew, who said that, you know what, we've been watching this for so long. All the stuff that's been happening in education, just opening up all the schools. And I mentioned earlier how this is so personal for me because, yeah, like just this today, we got the email notification that, yep, somebody in your kid's classroom has COVID. And so it's growing, it's spreading, and we're letting it rip because we're not following the science. So what can you do? what can you do, right? If you cannot change their perspective, like I mentioned, they have a perspective for a particular reason. That reason could be that they're focused on jobs and they're not focused on education. They're not focused on health. It's about jobs at the at the cost of everything, right? Like they know what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. For us, it seems it may seem like, why would you ever do that? But for them, it's like, no, like this is like literally why people voted for us and they elected us. And so they said we can no longer sit by and just watch all of this happen. Like this is getting crazy. So many educators that are getting sick from Omicron, they had to do something about it. And if the province and if some districts are not willing to or able to provide these masks, then we'll work directly with the Canadian Association of Personal Protective Equipment Manufacturers in order to provide these masks for educators. So they set a goal of raising $100,000, enough to provide every educator with a supply of N95 masks for 1 month. And within seriously a few hours of launching that campaign, they had already raised how much money? Over 5,000. So they raised 4,000, and now they're over 5,000 within 1 day. This is fantastic, phenomenal response. It's I've already surpassed 3,000, just amazing. So I am so excited to see this one. They are working directly with the manufacturers. They're getting them for a very reasonable price, because I think it's $1.25 each. So $5 is enough to fund 4 different masks, which you wear for 40 hours is our understanding. And you can also, if you want, you could potentially make them last a little bit longer. The way I've been doing it is I have this it's called Essential Oxygen Hydrogen Peroxide. It's just like a nebulizer. It's like a spray. And I just use it to spray the masks. But I'm not going to use that for my youngest now, because he definitely has COVID. So I'm tossing those. But if there aren't any known cases in that classroom, I think it makes sense to to reuse them. Why wouldn't you? If they're able to last a whole week. And so, using a spray like this one can, in theory, I've read some research papers that hydrogen peroxide vapor has been used in order to reduce the risks. They actually reuse actual masks that way. And so I don't know if this nebulized version or the spray version counts, but it's a low grade, 3%. I wasn't sure if it was going to work to begin with, but then I sprayed it and it actually did. It was just fine. I put it on my face and there was no irritation or anything. People apparently put this in their mouth. It's food grade. So I haven't had an issue so far. So to me, that was one thing. And I think that really what I like about this particular one is that equity is a very broad issue. It is very difficult to just go and say, oh, we're going to handle equity. But you could break it down into something very small. And it turns out masks, a month of masks for every single educator could be purchased for only $100,000. To me, that seems like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you get involved? Why wouldn't you be supporting that? So I see this as it's a wonderful opportunity. It is something that works for everyone, and the cost is not high. The thing that blew me away was how low the cost was. Everybody was saying, "Oh no, it's going to cost us $4 or $5." The masks that we're getting from Alberta cost that much. They cost $4 or $5 each. They spend millions on getting those masks that perform less well, because again, the decision had been made to pivot a existing company that hadn't built masks before and didn't have certifications for masks, to just start producing them. And they produce them, but of course they're going to be more expensive because they produce in a fraction of the quantity and they have no testing. So the quality is unknown. It hasn't been measured. And so, yeah, you could 100% use it at your own risk, like as they say on the box. Like, that's what you're doing. But why would you do that? Like, even educators are like, I'm not going to do that. I'll just go to like Home Depot and I'll buy some like known respirators that are actually certified. Yeah, you could literally do that and be better off. That's the thing that has been the hardest about this so far. But I want to say that like these types of results that I've been showing are pretty typical when you can connect the passion, your passion with purpose, because they create like these powerful results when you're connecting passion and purpose, because and you have to be able to, of course, like when you're doing this, you're of course communicating it in a way that is really easy for other people to agree with, because you feel this. Like we make decisions through the emotional lens. Like we're fundamentally emotional beings, and since our decisions are so formed by that, being close to where the anger is, being close to where the emotion is a strong way to compel people to action. And it gets people willing to agree with your point, and willing to contribute to your cause. And to me, you're not just doing a service for those people you're immediately trying to serve. I feel that when you're doing an initiative like this, you are serving those people who donate. Because think about it, right? You're frustrated that something is happening and nothing is happening about it. So are hundreds of other people, right? And these people are very frustrated and they're very angry as well. And they want to do something about it. They don't want to just stay mad. And so when you provide an opportunity for them to do something tangible that is going to help people, is going to move towards where something that is going to be beneficial for everyone, then everyone feels better. The person who donated, the people who received their donations, like this is us building each other up. This is us serving each other, right? Like I'm not the organizer in these cases, but by donating, like that's a good feeling, right? Like that is something that is a positive step. And sometimes that's what we have a hard time doing. Like we treat everything as like this giant thing. And one of the things that I learned from my own like school trustee, and I was talking about this earlier, I ran for school board trustee. And what I learned is that like the reality is change doesn't happen overnight. Change is this long-term process, and you need to be in for the long haul. And the name of this game is consistency and sustainability. Like ask yourself, what is that one thing? What is that one habit that you could start today that would make everything else in your life easier? I'm referring to the One Thing, the book. Now, when I ran for school trustee in the October election, I learned so much about these challenges that we face, and it relates to, again, the book Forward from Andrew Yang. A strong learning from the election is that it is very difficult to be moderate in your political views, even though school board trustees are supposed to be not part of any political party. But we're learning that no, they definitely are. You have to be one of the extremes, one way or the other. And the reason for this, as explained in Forward by Andrew Yang, was that somebody who is more extreme will run against you and likely capture most of the votes. And this is what we found in my school trustee election, the school board trustee election. There was one candidate who was the anti-mask, anti-vaccine candidate. He probably had the least amount of advertising. He had the most basic website. Yet, this person single-handedly captured the second highest number of votes. Second highest number of votes. The only person who caught more was the incumbent. So I learned that positioning is key. Both voters and the media always trying to fit you into some kind of box. Andrew describes it as you are the product. And of course, when they're confused, they're going to go somewhere else. And in Canada, like in the United States, you only get one vote for each elected position. And what this does is it encourages our politicians to be extremely confrontational. Personal attacking an opponent means that they get less votes. So why not do that? And so you get a very confrontational style of politics. And I thought yeah, of course, I'm born and raised, I mentioned, I come from the northeast side of Calgary, born and raised Calgarian. And I thought, of course, that's how it is. It's always been like that. And it was when I was doing grad school with a fellow PhD candidate. His name was Gregor McEwen, and he was from Australia. So, Gregor, if you're seeing this, shout out to you. He actually introduced me to this concept of ranked choice voting. And I thought, what the heck is ranked choice voting? What is this? And he said, it's different. So in Australia, actually, everybody, we've got 90% plus vote. And how do you get so many? Every election, we get 20% participation, 10% participation. Politics and the way it's all set up is designed for you to be sick of it and not want to vote, right? We make it hard for people to vote. And they said, yeah, if you don't vote, you actually have to pay a penalty. Maybe it's $20, $50, whatever. It's a few dollars, yet you still have to pay it. And so most people vote. And when you vote, you don't just put one person's name there, you rank them all. And you can choose I think 4 or 5 candidates. And so what happens is you write each name in the order that you would prefer. And let's say there isn't somebody with more than 50% of the vote, then what they do is they just remove the person with the least amount of votes. And anybody who put them as their number 1 is automatically going to be chosen is going to be selecting their number 2. And so that means no votes get wasted. But more than that, and something that I found interesting, was that it actually discourages people from attacking each other. Because, and this is interesting, they're less likely to see candidates attacking each other because you're also less likely to get the second vote, the second choice vote. If you're really confrontational, people are stay away. No, definitely don't want you. They wouldn't put you as the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth. You wouldn't be there. And so there might be some people who definitely agree with you, but then those people who it gives room for more moderate political perspectives. So you become a little bit more collaborative. Of course, this isn't to say you agree on everything, but at the very least, there's less incentive for trashing the other party. And so that one was like a quick example. And what I want to do now is I want to cover the last one. I may have not a ton of time, but I want to talk a little bit about the way forward, a way forward. And this is going to be like hard and fast. Okay, so I'm just gonna run through like a few different categories of suggestions that he has, and then that Andrew Yang has inside his book, and then we're going to see if you guys have any questions. So, economic suggestions. Many people have heard about the universal basic income. He calls it the freedom dividend. So he's proposing $1,000 a month, funded by a VAT, which is common in Europe. But like he's arguing for the VAT because the VAT is hard to work around. And he said that actually some aspects of this were already implemented in the stimulus plan. They had a $150 billion stimulus plan that was approved. So it was like basically enough money for 6 months of UBI. But instead it was like given as a check to most citizens. But in doing this process, they learned about some of the logistics of how hard it is. And so, of course, like this was to help combat the most common things like job loss. There were 10 million jobs that were lost. There was record deaths of despair. Now, previously, the solution I talked about was for voting. And so in voting, he suggested rank choice voting. And I'll explain that because it discourages trashing the opponents. And he also suggested giving dollars, so like politics dollars. So like every dollar would be matched or something like that. Like we kind of have that in Alberta. In Alberta, if you donate to a political party up to the first $100, I think like more than 40% of that is actually returned to you in terms of your taxes. So we have a little bit of that. He also suggests that there should be term limits for politicians, for elected officials of 18 years. So this would remove the gerontocracy. That is, you just need to like be old, like in order to make any decisions. And of course, he suggested like in politics, getting rid of the filibuster, which is often used like for a minority to stop votes of the majority, which seems anti-democratic, but it happens all over the place. People have found that this is actually an effective technique for blocking things. He suggested to install dashboards for the things that you want to measure that are most important, and ban lobbying. And how would he ban lobbying? He suggests giving them $100,000 per year if they do any sorts of public service. So that way they're not tempted by the money that comes from corporations. It's an interesting suggestion. I like it. It's like, I don't know if it would work in practice, but I mean, it's a book. You can have whatever ideas you want. For news, like news is a huge issue, right? Like we have all these social media accounts for free, but as I think Tim Cook said, like if you are not paying for the product, you are the product. And so his suggestion was to give people funds for paying for news. Or in the same way, you could go like, if I give you $1, like for every dollar that somebody gives you, like you give $1 back or something, like you would match the funds of whatever news people choose to buy. So you can make it cheaper. You can make rules that anybody who accepts these government funds, of course, has to correct things like inaccuracies, and they have to show balanced perspectives. They have to show both perspectives if they want to be funded by the public. If they're happy being independent, then that's great. But the reality is all sides are now pretty much independent. So this has been challenging. He also suggests, and this is something that I'm really pumped about, was amending Section 230 protections for companies. So companies in Section 230 are basically told, hey, we're not responsible for any of the content that is on our platforms. We'll make them responsible for any media that they amplify and they make money from. Because if you're making money from ads or you're making money from putting this content in front of so many people's eyeballs, you better be checking it. You better be responsible for it, because that really affects the narrative. It affects like how people think. And so I love that. I think that that's a great idea. Like, yeah, like not for every content, but for the stuff that you amplify, that your algorithms choose, double check it. That is your responsibility. And if something is false, fake, or something, get ready to pay. Get ready to be liable. This is not a bad thing. This would be good for us. One of the things that he said about politics, and this relates to what we talked about that I was referring to earlier, was in his interview, if you recall, was that there's a lot of factors that affects actually a person's political views. In fact, he said that personality determines up to a third of a person's political views. Like, for example, a person, if you're familiar with the DISC assessment, who is high on the conscientious side is more likely to vote conservative, whereas somebody who is more on the decisive side is more likely to vote Republican or ND. Did I get that right? Conscientious, or more on the decisive side is more likely to vote Democrat. In fact, if you actually look at the policies, like if you took all of the different political parties, he was saying that there's been some analysis done that really, if the policies that they make, only about a quarter or 25% of all policies made by all different political parties actually relate to the fundamental values of that party itself. Often things end up closer to the middle, like because it satisfies the most people. They're very rarely like on the extremes. And so your personality actually has more impact on your political views than even the political views of your family. So it, like, to a certain extent, you're born with a lot of your political perspectives. Now he also has some quick suggestions about taxes. So taxes, he says that a CEO, of course, like if they saw a problem, they could bring all the right people into a meeting and they could see change happen quickly. But this is very difficult in politics because of this need for consensus building. Everybody has a vote. Everything is political. So obviously this process is much more difficult. Of course, his suggestion, because like he's also a technologist, is to simplify the tax profiles and calculate as much of a person's taxes as you can automatically. Of course, he's saying like the reasons that this doesn't happen today is because there are large companies like Intuit that limit filing of taxes, because this is a huge industry for them. They make like $1.5 billion a year just on tax filing software. And so they're highly incentivized to not make this happen. And of course, there's another factor, which is actually even bigger, which is the governments themselves. They make a huge amount of money from the late fees on taxes. In fact, it's somewhere around $52 billion of tax late fees a year. So, whew, that is a lot of money that if you're a government, you would not want to be missing out on. So his suggestion, which I thought like these two suggestions, these ones I loved. So his suggestion was that the tax day, the annual filing of tax day, would be a national holiday. You could call it something like a revenue day. And his other suggestion, which has become more and more relevant over time, which has been to look at people and companies who evade taxes, right? So we're learning more and more from things like the Panama Papers and the subsequent reveals of all of this offshoring of money, that there should be potentially a percentage award for all of those who are able to effectively bring the people who evade taxes to justice. And he was suggesting this is kind of like a bounty on anybody who is not paying their fair share of taxes. He was suggesting calling them the tax Mandalorians. And I was like, yes, tax Mandalorians. I love it. I love the reference. There's a reason Baby Yoda is here. He reminds us that every master was once a disaster. And I love Star Wars. My kids love Star Wars. We're watching Boba Fett right now. And oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. Like my youngest was like, oh yeah, I was going to watch it. And then he was saying, like, oh, like there's some soup for you to finish. And he would do it, but like he couldn't, like he was just so excited about what was going on. He just like was standing up the whole time. Couldn't even sit down for it. It was impressive. So the last area, no, sorry, this isn't the last. One of the final areas he talked about was digital services. So one of the big changes that has happened is the realization that getting healthcare to everyone and getting funds such as like the what do they call it? Bring back better funds, like the checks to citizens, was an enormous task. So many people, it's so hard to get them into a system. You had to build new IT infrastructure. You had to build new server infrastructure. And in fact, they got several people who were like the DevOps leads at Google, at companies like Google, to join because they felt like this was like really meaningful work that could help a lot of people. And this created the United States Digital Service, so USDS. It's like a new department. It's a small department. Apparently now it has around 180 employees. And they were even going to, at one point, propose a tech innovation secretary. But apparently it didn't happen in the end, probably because of a lot of political lobbying from certain big tech companies, which control a lot of what happens in politics. So go figure. Of course, he was saying that, and just to summarize, like this point on we are being polarized to the point of radicalization. He said a good example of this, of course, was the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He also said that the political system itself is incentivized to have these attacks on other candidates. And his main message was that good people can't fix a broken system. Good people can't fix a broken system. And to me, that last message, that good people can't fix a broken system, is just such a strong call for why we need to be able to take our passions and then turn them into something that is sustainable, something that we can do over a long period of time, that can integrate with our lives, that, you know, our families will still be happy with, we will still enjoy doing, and we can still like have food on the table. Like all of these things are absolutely necessary if we want to see our change happen. If we're expecting this change to happen overnight, then we're not recognizing how long change typically takes. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for, right? It doesn't mean that we should give up. And I would love to see, if this is something that really resonates with you, I would love to see you come and visit the site. So go to edwardc.com/live and sign up for our email lists. And the reason for this is a lot of the things that I mentioned today about why it's so important to sustain change. How do we sustain change? How do we even leverage the existing systems like social media in order to build these funnels that we can then turn into like a value ladder, which will help us like get the revenue that's going to sustain change? That's all done through my site. That's all done through courses that I want to make available to you. And so I would really encourage you, go to edwardc.com/live, sign up for that email list. And if you can, I don't know if you're able to click like, or if you're able to follow, or leave a comment or something. Tell us, what do you think is what's the thing that you're most looking forward to, or what are you most passionate about? What is the thing that is holding you back, or what is the thing that would help you the most in this time? And if you send me something by email, like if you go to this edwardc.com/live, you'll have an opportunity to like write something to me. I read everything, right? I read all of the submissions. So if you submit something to me, I'll take a look at it, and I would love to include that in a future live stream. And like I said, I'm trying to do this regularly, like once a week. It's not always possible for me to do the same time because of other activities that happen at the same time. But I will try to be as consistent as I'm able to. I want to make sure that there is this consistency, right, of being available. And I know not everybody has like a Tuesday evening available. Like it's not easy for myself as well. But we have replays available. We're going to have content where it's interesting. I was just playing with one of the courses, my video funnels course, just the other day. And it's really interesting how you can build things like from one to the other. You can build all of like the whole courses, the quiz. You can create a very compelling learning experience, because it was just today that somebody was asking, hey, has anybody looked at like the new Alberta e-learning, Alberta e-learning learning hub? And I was like, yeah, I've seen it. And I could not believe my eyes when I first saw this, like how, wow, this is not at all, like this was intended to basically be the solution for the gap that students are facing. So like, oh, a student is falling behind, then how do I solve this problem? I just go to the e-tutoring hub in Alberta. Look at how fantastic the system is. Look, go here. All right, isn't that fantastic? Okay, yeah. And so I'm here. This is the Alberta e-learning e-tutoring hub. So I click on the first one. Describing words, adjectives, and they have a video, and that's it. It was made by Amanda for grade 6, but this is not you don't learn adjectives in grade 6. Anyways, doesn't matter. Let's play the video.
Welcome to the adjectives to help us describe something. An author might use an adjective to help describe something in their story, to help us better imagine it. Let's do an activity. I'm holding a cup in my hands right now. I'm not going to give you any more details about the cup other than that. In your mind, I want you to imagine what kind of cup I might be holding. Are you imagining a cup? Does it look like this one?
So my challenge with this this content, first of all, there's only 6 videos, and that's the entire like e-tutoring hub, which is embarrassing. The second thing is that like it's just the video, right? Like if I need a video to explain adjectives, why would I just not go to YouTube and just pull it up from there? Like it just seems like, why are we reinventing, like full on reinventing the wheel? Like I am positive that the concept of adjectives is explained in many other places. Why do I need to go here? And then of course it's just the video. Like there is no other content. Like there's nothing to do except watch videos. So like this concept of like, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch these videos, and then my child who is totally falling behind is gonna catch up because they watch these videos. No. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. There's zero chance of that. And so I see this as like clearly this was not created in order to help students, in order to help like parents who may have to learn at home. all of this was created in order to make more jobs available locally. And I really hope that it was worth it, right? Because I think that the total spend on this was for $45 million. Please tell me that this wasn't $45 million for 6 videos. Like, I'm sure there's more coming. But yeah, like the spend for this e-tutoring hub, which is in their budget, was around $45 million. And so, like, I can't even begin to use it. Like, I don't building and I said this before, like, building content that is aligned to a curriculum standard, whatever curriculum standards you have, is one thing, but building content that kids actually want to watch at home is a completely different beast. It is super hard to do, and very few are able to do it. So most people create videos like this one. There are like software tools that you can use, like to animate a little character. Like, there's all sorts of ways that you can actually make it quite compelling for a very low cost these days. Like, making videos, the cost of making even animated educational videos has gone down dramatically. And you can create like an animated character inside PowerPoint or inside whatever slide program you want. But that doesn't seem to be what they're doing here, even though it probably cost you like very little for a license for one of these, and it probably make it even more compelling than what you have here. And so I think that it's like a good lesson that, you know, have to understand that their perspective is totally different, and they're not really focused on the educational value of these things. They're just focused on how many jobs it creates, and understanding that these different perspectives are why you have like a choice, why you vote, why people run in politics, is they have very strong ideological beliefs, and they try to, like, curriculum, like it or not, it's ideological, right? It's this it's this way of encapsulating like our beliefs into the future for our children. And it is very common, like in politics, this is what you try to do. It's like you try to change education first thing, right? Because you may not be able to impact the current generation, but they're not going to be around forever. So you try to impact the younger, the better. And so it's unfortunate, like, that we're kind of at this spot. To me, it's more motivation for why we need to do the work that we do as activists. So once again, if you haven't caught it already, here it is, edwardc.com/live. So check it out. Check out my site. You'll be able to see some of the perspectives I have. And if you're looking for any of those courses, let me know. I can give you access to it at a discounted rate. And I want to make sure that you've got all the tools that you need. Oh, and by the way, this week, like, it was kind of crazy. I should be tomorrow. I'm very excited. I should be getting my Aranet 4, which is like a carbon dioxide monitor for the school. Hopefully it's like in time for the school council meeting. I don't know what happens that same evening, so it might be too late. But it doesn't matter, right? At least I've got something that I can use, because I want to have data. Like, I don't want to just say things are bad. I want to have, like, quantifiably, how bad is it? I want to know. And so that's kind of my approach. And then I also purchased Winix 5500. It's an air purifier. And this is something that can clean up. It's a HEPA filter. It's designed for 360 square feet. So a little bit bigger, like a play area for the kids, probably big enough. Like, I don't know. What are your plans if COVID happens in your household? Like, we honestly don't know. We're thinking, like, maybe we have to take this entire, like, basement space that I'm in right now and just, like, okay, it's all quarantine space for the kids, close off some of the vents, see if we can install some Corsi Rosenthal boxes. Like, honestly, I have no idea what we can do. Like, the biggest concern isn't our own home. I think we can handle it. It's the capacity of our healthcare system, which is at its, like, limit right now. It basically don't get injured, don't get in a motor vehicle accident, because if you need help, you won't be able to get it. But that's the challenge. Like the next weeks or months are going to be extremely difficult for a lot of people. And so hang in there. We are rooting for you. We are here to help you. And if you get to a point where you're like, you know what? Something needs to change here. And I want to be a part of that change, or I want to create that change. Then reach out. edwardc.com/live. We are here to help. And this is kind of a new area of passion for me. I feel like we're in this very unique generation, this generation of change, this generation of creating something that, this kind of future where we will all be proud to be a part of it. And I think that some of it is going to require us to reimagine our systems, but more importantly, it's going to require us to reimagine ourselves in a way that is balanced and sustainable, so that when we are making that change, we're not just doing it for like a short period of time with high intensity and low longevity. That is not the goal here. We want it to have long longevity. And so we're going to be giving a few more tips about this. I think maybe next time, if this was useful for you, let me know. I am constantly running through different books. One of the ones that I've really enjoyed actually recently was the co-active coaching book. And so I think I want to talk a little bit more about this course that I've been doing for some time. I'm doing multiple courses at the same time. I love learning. Honestly, if I could just like stay in school all the time, I would just do that, right? Like there's so much stuff that I can share about. But there is a really incredible book by Jenny Rogers called Co-Active Coaching. It is like a very thorough step-by-step guide on the coaching process and what's involved. And I have learned so much from the types of questions that she's asked that help me understand a little bit about, so these are some of the areas where I'm getting stuck. These are some of the areas that I'm struggling with. And I think that it has helped me to use that same type of messaging. Like I feel like I have a very specific superpower, which is like I love thinking about new things and coming up with the key messages of how that could be positioned in the market. Coming out with positioning and messaging, what makes you unique out of everything that's out there. That's kind of my area of passion, because to me, if you don't have really good positioning, nothing else really matters, right? Like, so for me, it's like, why change makers? Why not just like leaders in general? It's like, well, there's a lot of training for leaders. What I don't know is how much training there is for change makers. And I understand that audience well, because I consider myself to be one of them. And these are the people that, like, when I'm like speaking to them, I'm like, you and I are like, we are so aligned in terms of our values. And so that it gave me a sense of where I wanted to position and where I wanted to set everything up so that I could best serve the change makers that I consider to be people that are my close friends. And so once again, thank you so much. I will put the link down one more time. So let's see, edwardc.com/live. If you haven't seen it already, I would encourage you to check it out. Amazon may or may not allow me to show this. Well, okay. In any case, thank you very much. Oh, it stopped me. Okay. In any case, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate you. Stay in touch and reach out. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. Thanks. We'll see you soon.